Hi students, in this success tip video we're going to talk about the difference between class times and study times because a lot of students don't exactly know what's expected of them in college. In fact, we professors hear all the time that we assign too much work, and we hear students say, gosh darn it, we have lives outside of college. We have jobs and we have children. We have to take care of our families and our elderly members of our families. We need family time, we need social time, we need personal time. And what is with all this work? We have a life outside of college. And guys, we get it. We know that. We know you have a life outside of college. And please keep in mind, although some of us seem like we're, ancient history and so old, we do know what it takes. We were students once in our undergraduate and graduate educations. Some of your professors are still getting more and more degrees and more education. So we do know what it takes. We know that college, it takes time and effort and hard work. We also know that all of us have lives outside of college, and please do not think that you're the first generation of college students to have a life outside of college, right? It's just funny to think of. But there is a rule, and there's been a rule since the beginning of time, or at least since colleges first started, about how much time you're spending in class and how much time you should be studying outside of class. So let's kind of unpack those two words. We need to define what class time is and what study time is, because they are indeed different. So class time is the actual amount of time that you should be spending, or that you are spending, in the traditional classroom, right? In the traditional classroom environment, taking in and processing the information that the professor has provided. Now, we have online classes, we have hybrid classes. You're still taking in the information, and instructors and professors have all sorts of ways to reach you. It can be lectures, it can be discussions, debates, simulations, experimentations. There are all sorts of activities for us to present that information to you, to reinforce a theme or a concept. So if you have a credit hour class, the reason it's 1 credit or 2 credit or 3 credit or so forth is because that's the amount of time that you should be spending inside of that classroom, again, whether it's traditional or online. So if you're in a 3 credit hour class, that's saying you're supposed to be spending 3 hours in the actual classroom environment taking in the information. Again, it's the same thing whether it's traditional or online. It doesn't really matter. You're absorbing and taking in information from different kinds of instructional methods that your professor uses. So that's the actual class time. So if you're in a 3-hour class, you're spending 3 hours a week in class time. If you're in anything less or more, the rules hold. So if you're in a 1 credit hour class, you're supposed to be spending 1 hour in classroom. If you're in a 2 credit hour, you're spending 2 hours in the classroom. If you're in a 5 credit hour, you guessed it, 5 hours in the actual classroom. So now let's talk about study time. So study time is everything that you're doing that's outside of the actual taking in of the information that the professor is getting you engaged in, okay? So it involves a lot of stuff. So it is basically reading, reviewing, and processing everything. So it could be reading the textbooks, reading articles, watching videos. It can also be doing the interactive component of discussing with your professor and your classmates. It's the actual reading and processing and doing of the activities. It's all of the dialogue that goes on about understanding and clarifying and elaborating on concepts that you do with your professors and your classmates. And it's also the process of reflecting, and we can't leave that out. That's actually one of the most important parts of education, of learning. It's thinking back and connecting and reflecting on all of the stuff that you're learning on a daily, weekly, semester, lifetime of experiences, and relating all that information together. So that's basically what the study time is, outside of the actual classroom time. So our question then becomes, how much time should you be spending in the classroom? How much time should you be spending outside of the classroom studying? And there is a rule, and that's where our drum roll comes into place here. And the rule is as follows. For every hour that you're spending in a classroom environment, you should be spending 2 to 3 hours outside of class studying for that class. And the kicker, to get average grades. We're not talking about 4.0 work here, right? So for every hour in the class, 2 to 3 hours outside of class studying to get average grades. So let's take the class, Education 1300 Learning Frameworks. We're going to ask ourselves, how much time should you be spending in classroom, which again, either in person or online? How much time should you be studying for that class? And what's your total time commitment in a week for that particular class? So whenever we talk about this, please realize we're talking about a week, not about the entire semester. So let's start with classroom time. Learning Frameworks. It's a 3-credit-hour class, which means you should be spending 3 hours taking in the information through different kinds of instructional methodologies and activities that the professor is providing you. Again, it can be lecture, in my case narrated PowerPoints, voiceovers, videos, right? Discussion posts with your classmates. So it's how you're taking in that information. 3-credit-hour class, that means you're spending 3 hours a week taking in the information. Do study time. So for every hour you're in the classroom, you're supposed to be spending 2 to 3 hours outside of class to get average grades. So that means for every 3-credit-hour class, you should be spending 6 to 9 hours of studying, reading, reviewing, processing, reflecting, doing the assignments, interacting with your classmates, studying by yourself, studying in groups, collaborating, 6 to 9 hours. So the total time commitment for a week for the Education 1300 class should be the 3 hours you're in class, plus the 6 to 9 hours you should be studying, which is 9 to 12 hours a week for that class, for 15, 16 weeks, okay? And some weeks it might be a little bit more, some weeks it might be a little less, but on average, that's what it's adding up to, okay? So yeah, ask yourself as you're working on class in a week, am I putting in 9 to 12 hours for this one class? Because a lot of students sometimes are saying, oh, I'm spending so much time, and they're spending like 3 hours on a class. You're not even making a dent in the surface of what you're supposed to be doing. So let's take college as a whole. And let's say, and I have a matrix here, let's say you have a student who is a full-time college student taking 4 classes, and they happen to be 3 hours each. So I have this in your, actual notes there that you can see, but I've given the student 4 classes, as you see right here. They're enrolled in education, sociology, English, and history. All right, so they're all 3-credit-hour classes. So how much time are they spending in the classroom environment? You can see each of those classes is 3 hours, so it's 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. So they're spending 12 hours in the classroom environment. And for every one of those 3-credit-hour classes, they're supposed to be spending 6 to 9 hours, you can see in the second column, studying for that class. So every one of those classes is a 6 to 9 hour time commitment just on the studying. So you can see for the week, the student should be studying 24 to 36 hours, right? And so if you add across, one class in a week is 9 to 12 hours, but you got 4 of them, right, as we head down. That means 36 to 48 hours of a time commitment for a full-time student taking 4 3-credit-hour classes. So let me say that again. That is the total amount of time spent on STC classes in 1 week, 36 to 48 hours to get average grades. Okay, what's a full-time job? A full-time job is 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, 40 hours. And what did we just say? 36 to 48 hours to get average grades. That's why it's called being a full-time student. So, if you are taking professors who are requiring way less than that of you, or you're requiring way less of yourself and you're still passing your courses, we have to see that something is wrong. Okay, something's wrong with this equation. And the professors that are actually requiring you and pushing you on that rule, on those hours, they're actually doing it because they want your short-term success. They do want you to graduate from STC. They do want you to pass their classes, but at the same time, they want to make sure that you're ready for the real world, that you're ready for a lifetime of successes in your own personal life, your social life, but especially your career, your professional life. And this is what it takes to do it. So when we take the shortcut, either taking the professor that doesn't require anything of you, or you're allowing yourself to get by with just the shortcut, you will probably pass the class. You can even get to graduation. In the short term, you are going to be successful. But you have to ask yourself, what is the point of this entire thing? What's the point? It's to learn. And if you focus on learning, you're not only going to get to your destination, which is passing the class, getting the grades you want, and graduating from STC, but you're also going to be ensuring your long-term goal of learning and being successful in your future job and also in your future career and just in life in general, because you're taking that extra effort and that extra time. So keep in mind, guys, that this whole thing is a process, and you don't want to shorten yourself by taking the easy route now, because you don't want to have regrets later. You don't want to have regrets in the future, right? The point is to get to the finish line, but the point is to learn in the process. You don't want it to be a hollow victory. So the point of my entire video here is to show you that expect a lot from yourself. Expect a lot from your professors. Expect a lot from this process and put the work in. You need to attend your classes, participate in your classes, but also study hard. Put in the time, put in the effort, and also make sure that you're reflecting. And if you do these things, I guarantee that you're going to have the end result and the end version of you that's going to lead to success. So please study outside of class, and I look forward to interacting with you and reflecting with you along this journey.